I'm about ready to finish the sock and I need to bind off, but with a toe-up sock you do not want to bind off in a typical way, just a regular old bind off, because they're very tight and it's going to constrict the top of the sock. You could also use very large needles and try and bind off, but that's just going to make it look sloppy. Instead, I'm going to do a tubular bind off. And before I begin the tubular bind off, what I have to do is to convert this knit 2, purl 2 into knit 1, purl 1, because the tubular bind off works better when it's knit 1, purl 1. And I've already done it for part of the sock. If you notice here, I've got knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. And in order to do that, what I do is I start where I have a purl stitch next to a knit stitch. And I need to get that knit stitch in front of that purl stitch. And so what I can do is I can just reach over the next stitch on the needle, knit that one, and then go in and purl. Knit, purl, reach over to knit it. You can also use a cable needle to do this. Purl, because you're basically crossing. It's a kind of a one-stitch cable. Oops, except that if you drop a stitch you have to go back in and fix it, so I'm glad I could show you that. I just undo it and get my knit back, and this yarn's kind of splitty, I've noticed. It's a lovely yarn, but sometimes it'll split a bit. See, I'm going to knit this guy, and then I'm going to purl the next stitch. Knit, purl, and reach over to knit, and then purl, knit, purl, and then my next knit stitch is on this needle, so I'm going to reach over here and put this guy back on here and knit and purl, and then knit, purl, knit, and I'm almost done. Oops. See, I'm doing this quite on purpose so that you can see that even people experienced doing this can drop stitches. You just have to not panic and put them back on the needle the way they were. Knit. Reach over and get this knit. And so on. So I'm almost done with this, but I'm going to pause this video and come back in a second when we're ready to do the next step. Okay, I'm back and I'm going to show you the finished sock, the one that I've already done, and you can see that this is the tubular bind off. It's very stretchy, and you can see where I've converted the knit 2, purl 2 to a knit 1, purl 1, and it really is not noticeable in the finished product. So I've got knit 1, purl 1 for the whole thing, and the next step in the tubular bind off is to work 2 rows where I'm working a stitch and slipping a stitch, working a stitch and slipping a stitch. And that's what gives the tubular bind off its stretch, and so you want to do this as loose as possible. Now on this row, and I'm going to convert my stitches as I work, that I've got a knit stitch at the very end and a purl is the first one. It makes it a little easier for the tubular bind off. So I'm going to slip that purl stitch with the yarn in the front, and then I'm going to work the knit stitch. And again, I'm not going to pull this tight. I'm going to leave it loose. Bring my yarn in front, purl, slip the purl, put the yarn in front, knit the next stitch, slip with the yarn in front, knit. And if you've ever done a tubular cast on, this is the same basic procedure. And I'm just going to do this all the way around. Knit, slip with the yarn in front, and so on. Slip, knit, slip. And as I said, I'm going to change the stitches as I work around so that I've got a knit stitch on the end. Just a little easier when the tubular bind off. Now I'm going to pause this for a second when I finish this row and show you the next row where I do something slightly different because I'm working in the round. Okay, I've finished the row where I'm slipping the purl stitches and working the knit stitches, and I need to do one more round. And you can tell that I've got this slip stitch, this little piece of yarn in front of that purl stitch, and that's what's going to make this very stretchy and elastic. Now because I'm working in the round, generally when you're doing this, people are working in the flat, and so if I were to turn this, I would still be working the knit stitches and slipping the purl stitches, but because I'm working in the round, I have to reverse that. I don't want to slip a stitch twice in front of this, so I'm going to work the purl stitch, slip the knit stitch with the yarn in back, work the purl stitch, slip the knit stitch with the yarn in the back, work the purl, slip the knit, and so on. And I'm going to do that. So this is how you prepare to do a tubular bind off. Now if this sock had been a knit one purl one, I wouldn't have had to do that preliminary step, but because it was knit 2 purl 2, I did have to do that. And there you go, and I just continue to do that until I'm done.